Good morning, everyone. We've gotten back on the altar, which is a great thing, being able to be back up here. Most of the stuff is done. You'll notice there's still some construction back in the Daily Mass Chapel, and there's a couple of things that will continue to unfold here a little bit. One is that we'll have the sanctuary lamp that was in the chapel is going to be moved out. That was restored, and so we're going to be hanging that. And a couple months from now, we'll have a mosaic going up behind the tabernacle that'll be part of the construction and the change here. We're learning how to do things now in the new space with the new arrangement and with the tabernacle and Jesus' presence in our midst. And so please be patient with us as we do that. We'll also be having an article in next week's bulletin about what our proper decorum is and how we enter and leave the church and interact with Jesus' presence in the tabernacle. So there'll be more of that and some learning and time to be able to shift. It's a little bit of a shift for us as a community, and so please be open to that, but also be patient with us as we go through that. So, and thank you all for your patience over the last several weeks as we've been doing Mass on the floor and different things. So it's a pleasure to be able to be here and to be able to do this now. The liturgy itself is a little bit of a dance, right? It takes different partners and people that are involved in the liturgy and the way that we do the liturgy. How many of you have ever danced with a partner? Yeah? How many of you have ever stepped on someone's toes? Right? Occasionally in the dance of the liturgy, one of the things that I still do that is stepping on someone's toes is when we give the sign of peace, right? The peace of the Lord be with you always and with your spirit. And then if there's a deacon present, it's the deacon's role to say, let us offer one another a sign of Christ's peace, right? And I still sometimes step on the deacon's toes with that. I take his line, or I start to take his line for that part of the liturgy. But it got me thinking about, why do we do the sign of peace? What is the sign of peace about? And so as we kind of get into that in this liturgy, as we get to the sign of peace, a lot of times we turn to the people around us, we smile, we wish them a peace be with you, and it's a nice community thing here as we're getting ready to receive the Eucharist. But it's something more than that. It is, as the church says, it has a couple of components to it. One is sort of intercessory, that we're asking God's grace to be operative in our midst and in our world. And the second is that it expresses something of reality. It expresses something of who we are. And so the intercessory part is that we're asking God through our sign of peace with one another to bring unity to the body of Christ, to bring unity to the people of God, and to bring unity to the whole human race, to the whole human family. And so we're interceding to ask God for that unity. And then the part that we're expressing has two components. One is sort of a technical word. It says ecclesial communion. It means simply that we are part of the Catholic Church, the body of Christ, and that we are in union with one another. So we're expressing that. But it also expresses that what is called mutual charity in the general instruction on the Roman Missal. Mutual charity, which, if that's authentic, then that means that we are in a place of love, a place of goodness, of mercy, of forgiveness, that we're in that place, and that this sign of peace expresses that reality, expresses the depths of that reality. The reading from the gospel today, it's a long reading, and so I'm not going to go into each different section of that, but I do want to think about one section, which is the part where if you realize you've got something at the altar, or if you bring your gift to the altar and realize that you have something against your brother has something against you, that you go and be reconciled to your brother first and then offer your gift. As we live that out in the Christian tradition, we end up realizing that we're supposed to be in that place. The sign of peace indicates to us that reconciliation that has happened, that we live out in our lives. I can remember the first time I preached on that reading. It was the first Thursday of June 2005. It was part of the daily Mass readings, not the weekend readings, but it was part of I remember that because it was during the Presbyteral Assembly. And that Presbyteral Assembly, there had been some indication I was just ordained in 2004, but there had been some indication that there was a division among some of our priests. And so some of the priests were considered what could be called more progressive, and some of the priests were considered what could be considered more conservative. And there was seen this rift that was happening. And so we don't like that as priests, and so in an effort to try to overcome that, there had been a request of one of the guys in the more conservative camp to be able to have him plan and guide the Presbyteral Assembly when all of the priests gather once a year in June up at St. Meinrad. And so he had done that faithfully and had kind of gone through that, and then what he had planned as far as content goes was disturbing to some of the other priests. And so they came in kind of at the last minute and changed the content while asking that priest to be able to still do the administrative part of running the assembly. So it actually backfired a little bit. So it wasn't really this great unifying moment for the priests. Now the assembly went very well, but it was kind of there was this little bit further of a rupture. And they had asked the most newly ordained priest, me, to preach on Thursday of that week. And this was the reading, right? That go and be reconciled. If you come to the altar and have anything against your brother, go and be reconciled. I didn't sleep for 3 nights beforehand. I was there and I was trying to figure out how am I going to say in the midst of this context to my brother priests, how are we going to do that? I got up and I began by saying to my brother priests, this particular reading seems specifically designed by God to get a newly ordained priest in trouble, right? It went well, and I don't mean to overemphasize any of the division among our brother priests, but because we all have a heart for Jesus and we're in the person of Christ, but there's that kind of reality that happens, and the sign of peace is intended to bridge that gap, right? Both by interceding to God that He restore unity to the whole human family, but also by bringing us to a place of reflecting the reality of reconciliation in our lives and in our world. We're still hearing in the gospel reading from the Sermon on the Mount. And the Sermon on the Mount, in a lot of different ways, Jesus is pushing the boundaries of what was expected in the law, right? The law kind of guided the exterior behavior, and Jesus is, in a way, making it more radical. That there's something that has to happen on the inside of us. That there's something that has to be transformed interiorly, not just the external action. The law has to be fulfilled through that interior transformation. And that happens in today's reading, where we hear that, you're not even supposed to be, the law says you're not supposed to murder anybody, but Jesus says you're not supposed to be angry with them. And you're not supposed to call them names. And if there's any division between you, you're supposed to be reconciled before you offer your gift at the altar. And so it's a deeper transformation. It's a deeper change that happens within us. It's a deeper reality than simply following the law. It's allowing the law to be written in our hearts. It's about that transformation. And the sign of peace that we do today, when we get to that point, is something where, again, we're interceding for God to bring about that unity, but we're also trying to reflect that deeper reality in our lives. Not all of us are there. Not all of us are perfect. We need the Eucharist and God's grace to be able to strengthen us for that interior transformation. But in our culture, in where it's hard to even look at a Facebook post without getting angry at someone, right? That we need this sense of authenticity and integrity, letting our yes be yes and our no be no, and allowing God to work on the inside of us as we interact with others, as we respect the dignity of others, as we lift others up in their need, as we reach out to others, as we witness to the truth of the gospel within our own lives, we've got to have that deeper reality. So that the sign of peace that we give here is a symbol of our community and our affection for one another and the love that we share here at St. Pat's. But it is also that intercession to God, asking Him to make us one. And it should be a reflection of that deeper reality as we each journey in the relationship with God, so that our sign of peace, which precedes our reception of communion, becomes true peace in our world, a true light in the darkness, and that as we come forward to receive the Eucharist within us, that becomes God's sign of peace to us.